Hello, I'm Michael Burke. Many of us are keen to find out about our family tree, but what if there was a pot of gold to be found at the end of it?
To find that you're part of an inheritance is quite a shock.
I didn't think it was 1.3 million.
Finding forgotten families is the job of the heir hunters. They use genealogy to locate the next of kin who are in line for unexpected windfalls.
Hi, is it Deborah?
Oh, how much money am I going to get?
I was surprised, very surprised.
A visit from the heir hunters can change lives.
Meet up with all of you.
You never know when they might come knocking at your door. Today, I'm at the offices of heir hunting firm Fraser and Fraser. They've been working on a case where the dead person left behind not one, but 2 properties in Devon. So they believe the estate could be worth an awful lot of money. Gareth, what can you tell me about the dead person in this case and the estate that they've left?
The case of Alexander Gibb, we knew it was a case with value. We knew that because there were 2 properties involved.
2 properties?
Yeah, unusually, most of the estates we look at, there's 1 property,
Yeah.
but this case...
What was he doing with 2 houses?
Well, it was his sister's property, and she had passed away. He'd lived with her for a time, and then she died.
Whereabouts?
They were in Devon.
So likely to be valuable. Did you have at that stage any idea of how valuable they were, how valuable the whole estate was?
We didn't know the value of the actual properties themselves. We did know, however, that there were 2 of them, so that meant definite value for us.
So how much at this early stage did you actually know?
We knew very little. We knew that there were 2 properties involved, that there was a sister who had predeceased him, and that's it.
Well, that is really starting from a very low base, isn't it?
Yeah, very little information.
To discover exactly what Alexander Gibb's estate could be worth to any heirs, company boss Andrew has driven down to Devon to check out the 2 houses he owned. He's also hoping to discover if there are any other hidden assets.
So today we're heading to a house called Sunnybank in East Devon. The purpose of today's visit is really to look at the property, assess it for its contents, its value, and always in the back of my mind, making sure there's no will.
The heir hunters don't believe that Alex did leave a will, but if he did, it could mean that his valuable estate could be inherited by somebody other than the next of kin the team may find. This means any work they do could end up a waste of their time.
From what I understand, he was living here with his sister Margaret, who died only a few years ago. So it's an interesting estate because he seems to be the last of the family surviving.
Alan Marler was Alex's neighbour at the house where he died. Could he shed any light on other family members that Alex may have had?
I first met Alec when, sadly, his sister died and he inherited the property next door to me. First impressions was he's a big lad. He liked the dogs and the pets that we used to have, and he was blunt. He'd say a few things and it was straight to the point, no messing about. He'd speak his mind. He'd have a chuckle, he'd have a laugh.
But as he got older, Alex ventured out less and less.
You never knew he was there, really, unless he'd open the curtains and he'd close the curtains, and occasionally he'd wander across just to say hello, and because, you know, he lived alone.
At the house, unless Andrew finds any evidence of large bank accounts, the bulk of this estate will be the value of the 2 houses that Alexander Gibb owned. Any heirs will have to decide what they want to do with them.
I can just see what a lovely house this used to be. It's now very dated and it needs a bit of modernisation, but it's set in such wonderful grounds that it will have a real appeal, I'm hoping.
The search hasn't revealed any new information about Alexander Gibb, but has given Andrew an idea of what the house could be worth.
I have a really good understanding of what we have in terms of the house, and it's something I'll be recommending to sold probably with a guide in the region of £300,000. It's in a bit of a rural location, but it has huge potential.
But what about Alex's other property? It's 5 miles away in the Devon village of Trull. He shared this with his parents before he moved in with his sister. One of his neighbours here was Sidney French. Could he provide any clues?
I do remember that he and his father were gardeners. The garden in those days was spotless. Also, he and his dad were beekeepers as well, and they had a couple of hives of bees.
Sidney revealed that the family had worked at a local manor house.
When they came down from Scotland, I believe they came down for the previous occupants of Quinton's, and I think the house there was called Piercefield at the time. And he came down, Jock did, as the chauffeur, and I think Mrs. Gibbs was the cook as such. I would say it was a very close family, but strangely, I'm not aware of any of the relatives coming from Scotland down here to visit.
Andrew Fraser is at this house to look around, but has found more clues about the family than paperwork.
I'm just wondering if this is a photo of the family. You got Alex, his 2 sisters, and his father. Morning, Sean. Hi, Andrew. Sean.
He's invited a local auctioneer, Sean Hayward, to value the property.
So I've spoken to the neighbours, and they've opened this all up, and they've had quite a large kitchen dining room, so we can just see the potential.
Pretty much untouched, I think, since they purchased it. In terms of value, it's going to be something like 200, 250 as an auction guide price, but I really expect that to be in excess of that, to be honest. It's, like I said, it's an absolute gem.
Andrew now has a much clearer idea of the value of Alexander's estate.
We have bank accounts, we have 2 properties, we have a development plot, and I'm sure, together, this will all add up to quite a large figure.
Now he knows the high value of the estate, Gareth and the team in London are on the case, searching for any relatives of Alexander's who could inherit. The family's Scottish roots have given them a good start.
So we now know that the deceased was born in Scotland, which means, from the research point of view, he needs to head up to Edinburgh, in our Scottish office.
The heir hunters have several regional researchers and a Scottish office in Edinburgh run by Karen Johansson. She took over Alexander Gibb's case, hoping to find heirs for this valuable estate north of the border.
Well, it would appear that it's an English intestacy because it looks as if he had a property down in Exeter, but given that he was born in Scotland, it's really important we go straight to that research because I would guess from that that he's going to have living heirs up here rather than down in England.
Karen needs to begin drawing up the family tree.
The deceased's date of birth that I've been given is on the 9th of March 1929 in the Dumfries district of Scotland. Alexander's father, Christopher Finlayson Gibb, we established his parents were Alexander Gibb and Isabella Finlayson.
Karen can easily search for evidence of the family in birth, death and marriage records, as well as checking for them in the census.
I found that the deceased's father, Christopher Gibb, actually had a really unusual job. From the 1911 census, I found that at the age of 16, he was working as an assistant gardener. And when I looked more closely at that, he was living on it appears to be a country estate. It says here, the Castlelis West Lodge, and he's there with his father, Alexander, who's the estate overseer, which I think means he's the manager of a country estate. It's quite interesting because that ties back to the deceased's mother as well, Margaret Jameson. When the deceased parents married in 1924, Christopher at that time is working as a chauffeur when he's 29 years old, and he marries Margaret Jameson, who's then working as a table maid.
The estate where Alex's father and grandparents lived and worked is Castlelis House in Maybole, Ayrshire.
Castlelis House is a medieval house built around the early 15th century on a 300-acre estate.
Looking after this grand estate, house and gardens was Alexander's grandfather's job.
Estate overseer would have been a very good, solid job. Less managerial, but more hands-on with the people actually on the ground.
The records also show that as they grew up, the children were employed on the estate.
It wasn't uncommon on a large estate for an entire family to be employed by the estate simply because the estate was the largest employer in the region.
By the time of the 1911 census, Christopher, Alexander Gibb's father, is listed as working in the grounds.
It would have been a good way in to working as an outside servant on a large estate. They needed a great number of gardeners to run kitchen gardens and enormous acreages of lawn to be mowed and continual maintenance.
But Christopher didn't remain a gardener for long. As the age of the motor car arrived, he took on a new role on the estate.
We know that Christopher by the 1920s has become a chauffeur, which is very interesting because the chauffeur is the new form of servant. He's liveried, like the coachman before him, and often very elaborately so. People enjoyed dressing their chauffeurs up in brass buttons and peaked caps and so on.
It was while he was working as a chauffeur that Christopher met his future wife, Margaret.
Well, Margaret was a table maid, and so her job would have been to wait at table, not to have handed around alcohol, because that was the job of a male servant, but to have cleared away the dishes between courses, to have handed around the vegetables.
For the young couple, it was a great opportunity.
On the whole, working on a country estate like this would have been quite a good job, and a large part of that would be the free accommodation involved. To get a house with your job was something that was pretty valuable.
Alex's father, Christopher, was the oldest of the children. If any of his brothers and sisters had had children, they would be Alex's cousins and heirs.
The deceased's father, Christopher, actually did have 3 siblings born in Scotland, and I've found out that all 3 of them have died without issue, so it looks as if on this side of the family there aren't going to be any surviving heirs.
This was bad news for the team. With Alexander's father's side of the family a dead end, any hope of finding heirs to this hugely valuable estate now rested with his mother's family. When the heir hunters take on a case where there's very few details about the dead person, it can take real detective work to track down the living relatives. With facts few and far between, they sometimes have to make assumptions about relationships that subsequently turn out to be not what they seem. In the offices of heir hunting firm Finders International, case manager Suzanne Rowley has just received details about a Robert Brian Heavens who died without leaving a will. Details of his death were published on the government legal department's list of unclaimed estates.
With this one today, we don't have much idea of value. We know that he passed away in London, but we don't think he owned his property. Now, this means that it could be worth £500, or it could be worth, £100,000. We don't have any idea at this point.
Robert Brian Heavens was born on the 6th of March 1950 in Paddington. He died on the 13th of January 2017 in Westminster.
This is like a really good community because everybody just knows everybody and everyone just helps each other out. Everybody's just nice and friendly. Everyone's very helpful.
With a picture building of where Robert lived, but nothing known about close friends or family, Suzanne's first steps are to check if he ever married and had any children. She also needs to know his parents' names and if he had any other siblings. From Robert's death certificate and initial research on the birth records, Suzanne thinks she's found details about his mother.
So I found his birth, so I've got his mother's maiden name is Browning, so I'll now need to see if, find the parents' marriage to find who the parents are and then see if there's any other births with the surname Heavens and Browning to see if he had any siblings at all.
It looks like a good start.
Now I've got both his parents' names, Frank Charles Heavens and Marjorie Claire Browning. And I'll now need to look to see their families on the censuses to work out how big this family is going to be.
Robert's mother, Marjorie Browning, was born in 1912. The Frank C. Heavens she's found was born in 1910. With unusual names like these, they seem like very good candidates to be Robert's parents. With this information, Suzanne is soon able to build up a picture of Robert's close family.
So from the first steps of my research, I found that Robert Brian Heavens was an only child. I can't find him ever marrying or having any children. So at this stage, we then have to look to see if he had any cousins.
Beginning with Robert's mother, Marjorie, Suzanne looks to see if she had any brothers or sisters.
So looking at the census, on the maternal side, the Browning side, I found that there's just one daughter on the census in 1911. She's born in 1910, Constance Sybil Browning. And the deceased mother is then born in 1912 after the 1911 census. And there's no more, I can't see any more children, so it looks like it's just the two on that side.
If Robert's aunt Constance had any children, they'd be first cousins and possible heirs. So the researchers in the office dig for evidence of a marriage.
Actually, why mark such an unusual name? I'll do it as the mother's maiden name and see if I can find anything.
In the meantime, Suzanne has been looking at the records of Frank Charles Heavens and finds details of his parents, potentially Robert's grandparents.
On the paternal side, on the 1911 census, I was able to pick up the family. We've got Frank Evans and Thurza Maud Amy Smart. They've got 3 children in total, including the deceased father. Then after 1911, I've picked up on 4 possible births.
The research shows that Robert's father, Frank Charles Heavens, was one of 7 siblings. The eldest, Evelyn Annie, was born in 1906. And the youngest, Robert Frederick, was born in 1926. If any of them had children, they could be Robert's cousins and heirs.
So in total, looking at maternal and paternal, I've got 7 stems altogether to look into. So that's not a huge amount. So what I'll do is I'll split it up amongst the team, and hopefully we can work it as quickly as possible to get down and contact the heirs.
It's all looking pretty simple as the team delve further into the records. But there's bad news about Robert's maternal aunt, Constance.
On the maternal side, there's just the one sister. She never marries, and I can't see her having any children.
With the end of this aunt's line, there'll be no more research or leads on the maternal side of the family. Now the only chance of finding heirs rests with Robert's 6 aunts and uncles on his father's side. But Suzanne's not happy with the findings in her research.
So, again, on the other side, there's another stem that's the same, passes away, never marrying. And then a few of them do marry, but I can't see them having any children. So really, we're down to the one stem of Robert F. Heavens, who's born 1926, and I found an heir on that stem. So it's a bit unusual that there's so many, 7 potential stems to work, and I've only come up with one heir.
It's a disappointing start. With only one potential lead, Suzanne orders the original birth, death and marriage certificates to confirm her findings. Until they arrive, everything hangs in the balance.
If it comes to the case where he isn't linked to the family, then there could be a case of there being no heirs for this estate at all.
Every year in Britain, thousands of ordinary people get an unexpected knock on the door from heir hunters.
I found that amazing, that I had that side of the family that I didn't know existed.
Over the years, the heir hunters have given fortunes to the heirs that they find. As well as the unexpected windfalls, they also reunite relatives.
That's how they're connected.
Oh, it's a shock.
There are still hundreds of estates left unclaimed. Listen carefully for the names. If you recognise yours, then one of them could rightfully belong to you. Our first case today is Christopher Robin Reeves. Christopher was born on the 23rd of March 1943 in Colchester, Essex, and died on the 26th of June 2014 in Enfield, London. Adopted as a child, Christopher's family name was originally Alcock. It's believed he also had a sister. Could you be a relative of Christopher's? The next case is that of Dorothy Ethel Harris. Born in Barnstaple, Devon on the 26th of October 1900, Dorothy's maiden name was Williams. She married William John Harris and died on the 11th of April 1992, aged 91. Perhaps you are part of this Harris family. If so, a windfall could be coming your way. At Finders International, Suzanne Rowley and her team have hit a brick wall in their search for the living relatives of Robert Brian Heavens, who passed away in central London, aged 67. Research had confirmed that there'd been no heirs at all on the maternal side of his family. With all but one paternal uncle's line, which appeared to lead to an heir, also dying out, Suzanne now needs to confirm her research is correct. If not, the whole case will collapse.
If it comes to the case where he isn't linked to the family, then there could be a case of there being no heirs for this estate at all.
After an anxious wait, the paperwork Suzanne has ordered to confirm the research has arrived.
Thank you.
So, Suzanne, by now, you'd got Robert Bryan's birth certificate, on which an awful lot depended, because you'd made those assumptions. Here it is. Did it turn out as you thought it would?
So, the first thing I saw was this, right here.
This is the father. Frank Corrie Heavens. Now, wait a minute. You thought Robert Bryan's father was Frank Charles Heavens, and didn't you think that there was a Frank Corrie Heavens who was his grandfather?
You can see here.
Oh, this is the birth registers
yeah,
here.
I've got the two here.
So Frank Corrie here is born in 1879, and Frank Charles is born in 1910. So that's 31 years later.
So I went on to have the marriage certificate of his parents.
And it is right, look. There we are. Robert Bryan's parents, Frank Corrie Heavens, aged 69, marrying Marjorie Browning, aged 36. 33-year age difference in all that.
Yeah.
You thought Frank Charles Heavens was Robert's father. He's not. What was he, if anything?
So it turns out that Frank Charles Heavens was the son of Frank Corrie Heavens from his previous marriage.
Which makes him a half-brother.
Yeah, that's right, half-brother.
rather than the father.
Yeah.
That's confusing. Did he have more children?
Yeah, so he went on and had 7 children with the first wife, married again to Marjorie, and had Brian when he was about 70.
So let's, I mean, it's terribly confusing. Let me make sure I've got this absolutely straight. The Frank Charles Heavens you thought was his father turns out to have been his half-brother.
Yeah.
And the person you thought was his grandfather, Frank Corrie Heavens, was actually his father.
Yeah.
That was quite something, even for those days.
Yeah, definitely.
Frank Corrie Heavens was born in 1879 and is listed on the 1911 census as a butcher. But by the time he marries Robert's mother, Marjorie, at the age of 70, his life has changed significantly.
Frank was born into a Victorian working-class background, and he would have done a number of different skilled and unskilled jobs as he tried to get a living for himself over the years. Of course, the First World War comes along, and that shifts and changes things.
When World War I began, lives turned upside down. Frank left his butcher's role, became a gunner, and earned a regular army wage for his family until he returned to them in 1918.
So at the end of the war, when he comes back, having fought for his country, his job may not have been there. Many things like butcher's shops would have closed down. And as it moves into the 20s and 30s, unemployment really begins to grow in Britain. And by the 1930s, when we next find Frank working as a milkman, there is mass unemployment. For many, many men, any job they can get is something they're very grateful for.
It was not the best living, but Frank and his growing family were at least stable. In 1939, with war breaking out again, Frank's fortunes would turn. Older men like him, now 60, began to benefit from unforeseen opportunities.
The very first day of war, young men are conscripted into the army, and so there are all these spaces in the job market that slowly they disappear from. And into those spaces, yes, come women, but very significantly come older men. So Frank has a number of new opportunities, and it is no surprise to discover that what he works at is a government job.
In 1944, Frank's first wife, Thurza, died. Still working at the ministry, he met a young employee called Marjorie, who would become his second wife.
Frank and Marjorie's marriage epitomizes the social mobility and fluidity of that era. He is the son of a labourer from the Victorian times. She is a 20th century middle-class woman.
And in 1950, Robert Bryan Heavens was born.
Today, the huge age gap between Frank and Marjorie may seem a little strange. However, marriage in the 1940s and even the 1950s was not quite the romantic idyll it is today. It was much more about managing the household, living together, companionship, getting on in a way that seemed desirable to them.
With the new information about Robert's parents, Suzanne needs to redraw the whole family tree. All the people that she thought were Robert's aunts were actually his half-brothers and sisters. Despite this twist, the search wasn't redundant. Their children were now actually Robert's nieces and nephews, so still in line to inherit if they could be found.
So the relationship changes in the family, but it means that I'm still dealing with the same family. It means I'm still contacting the correct heirs to the estate.
Using the correct tree, Suzanne finds that several of Robert's half-brothers and sisters did in fact have children after all.
So having looked at the certificates, the birth, marriage and deaths, I've worked out that in fact there were other heirs amongst the family. So for example, I've got a line here of Mabel Grace Heavens. She did marry to a Robertson, and I've just found that she had 2 children. I found one of them. I've got a telephone number here. So I'm going to try and give him a call and try and catch him in.
The person she's hoping to reach is Ian, Mabel Grace's son. If Suzanne can make contact and confirm this is the person she thinks it is, she'll have successfully found her first heir.
It didn't seem that he was in at all. The phone was just ringing. So what we'll do is we'll get a representative out.
The team wastes no time getting a travelling representative on the road to make contact and confirm any leads. And with all the new information, Suzanne has more potential heirs to call.
Now this beneficiary is on the line of Amy Minnie Heavens.
Suzanne hopes this phone call will prove her research is correct. If anyone's at home.
I wondering if you could help me at the moment. We're looking into a Nash and Heavens family tree. We believe you may be connected to it. Can I just confirm a few things with you? Is that okay?
The heir confirms the details. This means that Suzanne has found the right family.
The person that's passed away is Robert Brian Heavens, and his father is Frank Corrie Heavens. So that's also your nan's father as well.
This is Ian, an heir. Robert was his half-uncle. Luckily, the heir hunter's travelling researcher finally managed to catch him at home. The news that he was to inherit from a family member he'd never heard of came as a bolt from the blue.
It was totally unbelievable. You know, as I say, when the man first came to the house, and it took me a long time to take it all in. Grandmother died in 1944, and they had 7 children, 4 boys, 3 daughters, and 4 years later, that's when we remember that the grandfather disappeared. You know, he disappeared in 1948, and that was it. We never knew he married or anything.
It seems that when Ian's grandfather, Frank Corrie Heavens, remarried Marjorie and had Robert, he cut ties with his first family. It was up to the heir hunters to reveal what had happened.
Gentleman came in, we sat down and we talked it through, and I realised it all fell into place.
Robert Heavens was on Ian's mother's side of the family, and his existence has solved a long-running mystery.
Grandfather must have met this younger lady. He was never spoken of again. No one ever mentioned him, because I don't think anyone knew where he was. And that's why it's just a surprise that all this has come about. Total shock. You know, out of this world. I mean, you think your mother's the last surviving of the family, and all of a sudden, the family, there is still somebody left of the family, you know, who I'd never met. I find it rather sad, really. It would have been nice if I'd have known he was still alive, because it was part of my mother's family, you know. It would have been nice to have met him sometime.
Robert Heavens may not have known about his half-brothers and sisters or his nieces and nephews, but thanks to the heir hunters, his estate, currently valued at around £3,000, is going to his family.
Overall, we located 7 beneficiaries. Now 4 of those have signed with us, which is a really great result. And it took us a few days to wrap everything up, but finally, you know, the case is completed.
For Ian, it's a bittersweet windfall.
It's the shock of it all. At my time of life, I'm going to be a beneficiary to somebody I never knew existed. And that makes it all the more, well, unbelievable, for want of a better way of putting it.
At Fraser & Fraser, the team were hunting for the heirs to the considerable estate of Alexander Gibb, who left behind not 1, but 2 valuable properties and a plot of land. The final figure had yet to be established, but as it was looking to be extremely high, the pressure was well and truly on to find heirs.
We have bank accounts, we have 2 properties, we have a development plot, and I'm sure together this will all add up to quite a large figure.
Alexander Gibb spent most of his life as a tax official in Devon. But his neighbour had revealed clues that had led the team to the family's origins north of the border.
I would say it was a very close family, but strangely, I'm not aware of any of the relatives coming from Scotland down here to visit.
The research for the case was being handled by the firm's Edinburgh office and case manager Karen Johansson.
deceased is known to have passed away in Exeter in England, but it looks as if, from the background research they've done, that his two sisters that he had have passed away without issue, and so we're looking to find cousins on the case.
Unfortunately, Karen's research so far has shown that on Alexander's father's side of the family, none of his uncles and aunts had any children. Any hope of heirs now lies with his mother Margaret, a table maid at the Scottish estate of Cassilis.
Well, from the research we can see that the deceased mother was Margaret Gilbanks Jameson, and we get that information from the deceased birth certificate. And from her marriage certificate, we've been able to work backwards to her family, and her parents were John Jameson and Williamina Tomlinson, and we've established that there were 6 children in total, all girls.
This is great news. With Alexander having 6 aunts on his mother's side, the chances of finding an heir to this very high-value estate are now looking good. Margaret was the oldest of the 6 girls, born in 1902 in Dumfries. Her sisters were Barbara, Jessie, Sarah, Elizabeth and Mary. Consulting the birth and marriage records back in Register House, Karen was able to find all of Margaret's sisters.
And from looking at the marriage records, we've now established that all 5 of those sisters have married, and we think it's likely now that on each line we're going to be looking at finding living heirs.
Karen found that between them, Alexander's aunts on his mother's side had 16 children. All of them his cousins and heirs. One of them was also called Alexander, and this is him. Living in Sanka, only an hour from Alexander Gibb's place of birth, Alexander Haddo had barely known his elder cousin.
We haven't had much contact in life. I only seen him once, and it was when he was in the army on leave from wherever he was based, and he wasn't able to get home where his parents were, and he came and spent a couple of nights with us. Like, I remember seeing him getting off the train, and he was 6 feet some, and he looked $1 million to me. Like, you know, I was only 6 or 7 or 8 years old at the time.
Knowing so little about that side of his family, Alexander and his daughter Lynn have come to Cassilis House to meet Chris Savage, director of the private estate, to discover more about the Gibb family's time living and working there.
It's a lovely woodlands anyway, and you can see it's estate woodland that's been well kept. Oh, here's the big house. Eh? And look at that. Is this part of the inheritance?
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
So we know Alexander Gibb worked here as an estate overseer, but we also can find that some of the other family members were also employed here. I think there's a connection to one of them being a table maid. Christopher was shown as a chauffeur in some of the old records.
Uncle Chris.
Okay, take your time.
Inside, Chris has some interesting documents about the family to show Alexander.
Right, so we've set out some of the old records that we've managed to find here.
And there's Gibbs, Alexander Gibb, Isabel Gibb, Christopher.
So 1911, this is the 1911 census.
Yes.
Alexander, Isabella, Christopher and John, all resident here at that time. That time,
yes,
Castle's house was being rented by a family called Strain. And Alexander was employed as the estate overseer. So here's a map from 1896.
Yes.
We've got Castle's house shown at the top here. And if we go all the way back down here, this is where you came in.
At the gate.
At the gate lodge.
Yes.
We drove up, we passed the wall garden.
Aye.
And we came on up. So Alexander was overseeing that part of the estate.
Yes.
What's left of the original house reveals what life must have been like for the servants.
So, any idea what that might be for?
Oh, that'll
I've
be
seen
the
one of these
bells.
before.
For the bells, aye.
The bells.
For the maids.
Yes.
So, I think it's clear here that this would have been put in by the Strain family.
Uh-huh.
Because it's the Strains
Oh, yes.
identified here, and then all the other rooms in the house. And then the earlier version of that bell panel was the original bells, which would have been connected back through by wires through to each of the rooms. And you've got to kind of think as Margaret as a table maid in particular, and she would be living in the, or spending her time in the kitchen. When a bell went, she might be dashing off to attend to whoever's needs in the house that's been called on.
For Alexander, you're never too old to learn things about your family.
We hadn't a clue about this at all. I didn't even know my Uncle Chris worked here. But I always wondered why Alec was in the Scots Guards. But he must have been born here. A thoroughly good experience. A good way to spend the day.
In finding Alexander Gibb's cousins, the heir hunters have been able to ensure his valuable estate returns to his rightful beneficiaries.
We were able to trace his family down to 23 living heirs in Scotland through looking at the birth, deaths and marriage records. It was just really satisfying to find that although his own two sisters had no family of their own, there was a much bigger family out there to be found.
With the two properties in Devon, Alexander Gibb's estate was a potentially valuable one. But the big question is, just how much money is likely to get passed on?
OK, Gareth. What did the full value of the estate turn out to be?
It was substantial in the end. We had the two properties, and it turned out a piece of land. Conservative estimate on that is 800,000.
Wow, that's a lot of money.
And also we found some other assets as well, in the region of £200,000 in accounts.
So, £800,000 for those two properties and a little bit of land that went with them, and another £200,000 in other assets of one sort or another. You're talking about £1 million estate.
Yeah, £1 million plus. They don't come around very often.
Wow.
Amazing.
How many heirs did you find?
In total, there were 23.
Wow. I mean, those heirs, you know, I mean, they get different amounts, don't they? But some of them are going to get a pretty hefty whack that they didn't know was anywhere in the offing.
No, exactly. And you know, I don't think when you're looking at estates like this with substantial value, you know, it comes as a real surprise to the beneficiaries.
Yeah, what a knock on the door that is.
Yeah, absolutely.
The case of Alexander Gibb is an interesting one. It was the choice of his parents to move away from the family home in Scotland many years ago. And it seems Alex and his sisters lost touch with the wider family, who hadn't even heard of them for years until the heir hunters came calling. And remember, the heir hunters are still looking for the heirs of more estates. Could they come knocking at your door next? Until next time, goodbye.